Hey everybody, in this video we're going to talk about some hidden infections that are related to brain fog, to chronic fatigue, to hormone imbalance, to Lyme and mold, and so much more. I'm Dr. Diane Mueller. I'm founder of My Lyme Doc clinic, where we treat Lyme, mold, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, pain, brain fog, dementia, so much more. I've been working in the Lyme and mold industry now for about a decade and a half and have gone through my own personal issues with these sorts of diseases where I thought I was dying. I basically thought I was going to have to move to a deserted island and live out my days in a hut because I couldn't even really walk some days. So anyways, I'm now passionate about getting this information out to people that are struggling with these kind of conditions. And one thing that is not always talked about, it's talked about some, are infections that can be in the sinus cavity. So we can have infections in our sinus cavity and not have a huge amount of symptoms here. So for some people, when they have infections in their sinus cavity, they'll have a lot of symptoms. For other people, they won't have any symptoms here, but the infections will be leading to the brain fog, the dementia, the chronic fatigue, all these different things, and nobody's looking here. So there's more and more awareness about the oral cavity and about periodontitis and other types of bacteria-ridden types of scenarios in the oral cavity as being contributing factors to our overall health picture, but we're still beginning the conversation of what's going on in our sinus cavities as really contributing to this. So one common pathogen that's becoming more common that you may or may not have heard of is MARC-ONS. MARC-ONS is a type of staph. It's an acronym. Its long medical name is multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative staph. And basically, this is a very fancy medical way of saying it's a type of staph infection that's very resistant to antibiotics. And we see this staph as causing a lot of widespread problems in the body. And so these types of problems, for example, can be things like messing with our thyroid hormones, our adrenal hormones, causing a lot of inflammation. So when we have this infection, it can make it harder to heal from other infections because it's actually wearing the body out. It's using the energy stores, for example. The other thing that's really interesting is a lot of people, if you look at MARC-ONS, one of the things you're going to find online is you're going to find a lot of treatment with this antibiotic cocktail nasal spray called beg spray. When I first got into working with diseases like this, I tried beg spray on a lot of people because that's what everybody in the industry was doing. And I have to tell you, of all of my clinical career, beg spray has been one of the most underwhelming things I've ever seen in practice, meaning I've not seen very good results as far as it actually doing what it's supposed to do. When I've talked to EENTs who are aware of these types of things, I talked to one EENT who did a lot of surgery and scoping, and he would take a scope and he would put it into the sinus cavity, and one of the things that he would see is he see that this particular bacteria, this particular staph MARC-ONS, oftentimes was hidden and behind a fungal calcification. So we get fungus on our nose, fungus secretes biofilms, and the biofilms are these kind of mucilaginous, like they're kind of these mucousy carbohydrate protein matrices. And so the fungus would create this like matrix. Think of it like a fortress for the bugs. And then MARC-ONS and the fungus would be hiding under this fortress, making it really hard to get to. The other thing that I've seen that's really important with this is oftentimes these nasal sprays don't get very far back. So they don't get very far back into our sinus cavity, right? And so what we need to do is we need to use something that's going to disseminate further back. So an example of what disseminates further back into our sinus cavity, one example of this is nebulizing. So we can nebulize certain treatments, things like thyme oil, garlic works really well. We can nebulize things that allow us to turn the medicine into steam. And when this happens, we wind up getting those antimicrobials further back into our sinus cavity. Another thing to always remember with sinus type of scenarios, if you are testing for these things, oftentimes because our oral cavity our oral nasal cavity is connected to our digestive tract, right? And so one of the things that I'll see, for example, is we can actually get staph in our gut. And we see this on stool cultures. So sometimes one of the things that can happen is if we're treating our oral nasal pharynx here and we are not treating our gut at the same time, we can actually treat one area, we can get this area clean, and then all of a sudden it comes back. Well, why is that happening? Because we're not treating both parts of the body at the same time. So we want to think about what we're doing treatment, how we're actually treating all of different areas where a particular microorganism will grow, and basically take that into consideration when we're really doing our treatments and that sort of thing. So remember, when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about the sinus cavity, right? We're talking about the entire body, and we're talking about how to impact things like fatigue and brain fog and all of these different types of conditions that are actually inflammatory conditions, conditions that are related to our nerves being inflamed, our hormonal systems being inflamed, widespread molecules that are inflaming spread throughout the body. So you really want to consider that, and you want to consider looking at the whole body, which is something that we do in our clinic when we're treating these complicated conditions. So if you're interested in getting help, please check out information below about my clinic. We are accepting new patients. We do offer free discovery calls for people. So all of that information is below. The free discovery calls are just a time for you to ask questions and see if our approach is right before you really invest your time and money into working with us. And then beyond that, if this has been helpful, please do subscribe to my channel. Please don't keep me a secret. I want to get this information out to as many people as possible. Please do tell your friends. I'm Dr. Diane. We'll see you in the next one.